So as you mentioned, they've filed for bankruptcy protection in the US. They've done this under Chapter 15, which governs foreign companies in the US that are undergoing restructurings, basically for protecting them from any creditors that may want to sue them. So you've probably heard of Chapter 11. That typically governs American companies, but as I say, this Chapter 15 for foreign companies. Now, according to court filings, they say these negotiations are ongoing in Hong Kong, the Cayman Islands, as well as the British Virgin Islands. We've reached out to Evergrande, but so far not yet heard back for confirmation on all this. But a reminder for those who think, actually, I've probably heard of Evergrande before. It is, of course, China's huge property giant. We were talking about it a lot a couple of years ago. They have about 1,300 different projects across 280 different cities in China, and they invest in everything, not just property. They also have, for example, an electric vehicle maker as well as a football club. But as I mentioned, 2021 was when we saw the company default on its debts, sending shockwaves across the global financial system and, in fact, triggering a string of defaults across other builders who were either owed money from Evergrande or were expecting Evergrande to complete some contracts with them. Since 2021, we've seen about 40%, or the companies that make up about 40% of China's housing sector default. And currently, as we understand it, Evergrande has about $300 billion in debt. It's lost about $80 billion in the last 2 years, and in fact has even been in a trading halt its shares since last year, Tig.
Yeah, indeed. And as we've been saying, the property market very much in the focus in China right now. We saw house prices earlier this week dip for the first time since the ending of pandemic restrictions. Worth stressing, though, Evergrande is a different company to the other one that's been in the headlines a lot in recent weeks and months. That's Country Garden. Can you bring us up to speed on what's happening with that company?
Sure. So they say, for example, that the losses of if Country Garden was to go under, that would be far, far greater than Evergrande. It's a much larger company. It, of course, warned in the last couple of weeks that it was going to make about an $8 billion loss in the first half of this year. And for any of us who remember the trials and tribulations of Evergrande, you could almost have a little bit of PTSD. They also told bondholders that they were not going to be able to service the bond repayments. This was, of course, the start of Evergrande's troubles. We have seen its shares up today about 3%, but they've lost almost half their value in their past month. And the issue here is those unfinished projects that you mentioned. Basically, people buying properties off the plan, seeing construction falter, and then buyers therefore stopping paying their mortgages, and that further causing financial stresses for these developer countries. And it must be said as well that these developers in the property sector makes up about a third of China's economy. So it's a really pivotal sector, creating fears of contagion or what these potential collapses and defaults may mean for the rest of the economy. And of course, China's economy is really struggling at the moment. We've talked about the fact that it has hit deflation, prices going down rather than up, super unusual considering the rest of the global economy. We've talked about the fact that growth is down, trade is down, and indeed the central bank there having to cut interest rates earlier this week. Most unexpected, as the world's second largest economy struggling really to get back after the pandemic.
Okay.